Happy Wednesday. Welcome, welcome. We're going to get going in about 3 minutes. Hi, Kara.
Hi, Sue.
How are you?
I'm good, thank
Are you
you.
ready for today's
Super
session?
happy to be here.
I love the fact that I'm smelling brownies in the house, though. It's so tempting.
Right after.
Okay.
Good to eat.
We have dessert coming. So hey, if you're here for the first time, I'm Sue Hitzman. I'm the creator of the Melt Method, and today we're going to be doing some neurostrength techniques, and I will explain what we're doing in about 60 seconds, just so that we start right on time. I am from New York, although we are out here in beautiful Florida, where it is just warm and sunny today. Today you're going to need the melt resistant band. You're going to need your hand and foot therapy balls, and you're going to need either a performance roller or a full roller. It's just really up to you. Actually, probably better to have this one. Maybe we'll do some upper body length techniques. Now that I'm saying that, I'm going to go ahead and set that aside. So hey, if you haven't subscribed to this page on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe. And if you want to find out more about Melt Method, or you don't have the products, you can go to meltmethod.com. You can find out all about the program. And of course, here on the YouTube channel, there's piles of different videos that you can go ahead and practice and learn more about the concepts and the treatment. Yeah, we're going to be kind of working on the thought of weekend warriors. So we are at 4 o'clock. So welcome everybody who's joining in today. Go ahead and say hello in your in the chats if you want to let us know where y'all are from. So today we're talking about weekend warriors. And what do I mean by that? Are people who train hard when they go to the gym, but for the most part of their day, they are not standing or moving very much. They're either sitting at a desk or, like Kara, you're on your feet all day.
All day running, all day.
All day running, all
I
day.
get over 10,000 steps a day.
Oh, 10,000 steps.
Well over 10,000.
Yes. So for us, it depends upon what your lifestyle is. But what I can tell you is from working with people who tend to have elbow strain, which is super common for those of us who train, as well as neck issues and low back pain. A lot of it is because the thoracic vertebra is fixated. So when we're sitting at our desk and we're working away, we tend to get into this very flexed posture, and it can just wreak havoc on so much of your body, not just structurally, but also organs. We're putting a lot of pressure on the diaphragm, a lot of pressure on the gut, so it can actually lead to other problems. So what we're talking about today is something called neurological inhibition. And what I mean by that is that your brain doesn't know about muscles. Sensory motor control and how many motor neurons are activated is completely involuntary. And for a lot of us, because of these postures that we take, the deep stabilization aspects of your shoulder girdle and your spine become inhibited, or what are called neurologically weak. So I'm not talking about, you can bench press all you want. Maybe you bench press 200 pounds or 500 pounds, whatever. But that does not mean intrinsic stability is there. And I always say you cannot be intrinsically mobile if you're intrinsically unstable. So you can't be mobile if you're not stable. So we're going to work on the stabilization components, and I want to teach you some of the forearm techniques, which for those of you guys who play tennis or golf, or maybe you're, I don't even know, boating, you're on a boat and all the bouncing, all of these things can cause a lot of structural instability in the upper body. So we're going to be using the hand and foot therapy balls, and the ones that you're going to need are the large soft and large firm balls from your kit. You are going to need a resistant band, and Kara's going to use the light gauge resistant band. I'm going to use the regular one. I'm being ambitious today. And last week, Kara was here, and we were working on side lying arm fan. So I think we're going to throw this one out to you guys again and see if your brain has actually reprogrammed and remembers that technique, which that's really the cool thing about neurological reintegration, is once you've reintegrated a better neural pathway, you can oftentimes come back to it and quite quickly reintegrate those deep stabilization mechanisms without compensation. And really, the more you practice and repeat this, the more easily your body will transition into stability. So we're going to start just like we do all of our sessions with a quick rest assess. And then we're going to do some upper body rehydrate so that our body is nice and juicy before we do some of the treatments. And we're going to be working on our hands. We're going to be working on our shoulder. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. So the first thing you're going to do is just go ahead and lie on your back with your palms faced up and your arms and legs extended. And I'm just going to invite you to say these words in your mind. I give myself permission to go into my body and sense what I feel. and trust what you feel. Try not to fidget or adjust or move about. You've put yourself into a nice resting state. And I want you to use your body sense. And for those of you who are new, body sense is that sixth sense. Instead of using touch, movement, or vision to assess what you're feeling, just notice the masses and spaces of your body. Masses are touching the ground, spaces are off the floor. And when we've got a lot of accumulative stress in our connective tissue, it's going to alter the ideal placement of our masses and spaces. So what's ideal? In your upper body, ideally you're feeling like your head is weighted behind the bridge of your nose. If you use your body sense and start at the back of your hands and scan up your arms, ideally your arms feel evenly rested to the ground. And in your torso, if we don't have a lot of accumulative stress displacing the fine balance of our upper body, you're going to feel your back weight is on the rib wall and most specifically below the shoulder blades. So where women define the bra line, just below the shoulder girdle, ideally that part of your back feels weighted to the ground. But if you're lying there and you're noticing your head feels tipped off of center or one arm feels more weighted, or you're feeling most or all of your back weight's actually on the shoulder blades, you might even feel the edges of the blades digging into the ground, just make a note of it. We're going to see if we can remedy some of that with our treatment today. If you're not sure what you feel using body sense, go ahead and turn your head left and right. And you can use movement to evaluate accumulative stress in connective tissue. If you feel like you have limited range to either side or you actually feel pain to turn your head, just make a note of that. Maybe your shoulders are following your head turn. And then bring your head back to center. Take a nice breath in. Notice how your body expands. And then as you exhale, start to tune into the space of your low back. When we have a lot of accumulative stress in our neural core, it's going to displace the placement of our low back curve. And without touching your low back, I'll let you cheat here and use touch to touch your belly button, but don't touch your low back. And just notice, does the arch of your back, are you perceiving the arch of your back feeling more lifted above the navel or below? And ideally it's below. So if you're saying, no, I feel like the arch of my back goes from my shoulder blades all the way to my tailbone, just make a note of it. Again, accumulative stress will cause some unnecessary tension in the mid-thoracic and lower thoracic spine. And then no more touching, bring your arms back down and notice your lower body masses and spaces. Now we're not going to work a lot on the lower body at all today, but I want you to notice your pelvis, the back of thigh masses, the back of calf masses, and your heels. In your pelvis, ideally, you're feeling like you're weighted on two evenly weighted butt cheeks. Notice if you're feeling your tailbones really pronounced to the ground. Notice that the back of thigh masses are feeling more like spaces off the ground. Notice if the knee space feels unevenly lifted or the calf mass feels unevenly weighted. And without looking at your feet, how did the feet angle outward? Ideally, it's like a letter V, northeast, northwest. Notice if your feet feel like they're pointed away from your ankles or out to the sides of the room. I would call all of that a sign of accumulative stress in the pelvis. And again, that's going to alter your neural core. All right, so I gave you lots of things to feel. I want you to commit 4 to memory so that when we come back and reassess, see if you notice a change in these 4 specifically. If you're lying here and you're feeling most or all of your back weight's on your shoulder blades, you got a high tensional lift in your mid-back, your tailbone's pronounced to the ground or the back of the thighs feel off the floor. 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of those, make a note. And then finally, assess your autopilot. Divide yourself into a left and a right half, and just using body sense, notice the weight of the left-right halves. If your autopilot, the parts of your body that are trying to support, protect, and stabilize you are out of balance, you're going to feel one entire side of your body will almost feel more weighted, or one leg will feel longer than the other. Just make a note if that's what you feel. Okay, so now that you know what you feel, go ahead and bend your knees. You're going to go ahead and roll yourself on your side. Come on up to sitting. And we're going to do a hand treatment, but we're going to be adding the forearms to this. And in the middle of it, I'm even going to change my camera position so you can really see what I'm doing on my forearms. So we're going to start by sitting upright, and we're going to start with a wrist assess. So we're going to put our elbows and our palms together. And once you have your arms out ahead of you, notice if that causes you to slouch forward. See if you can bring your body upright and take a breath into your back. And remember what it feels like to breathe into your spine right now. And then move your wrists and just notice if you have any tension or any clicking, and then drop your hands back and look at the angle of your hands. Ideally, your hands make a letter T. If your hands are making a V, a W, or your fingers kind of coil back, you have connective tissue dehydration in your arms, limiting the movement of the wrist. And then also, as you bring your arms down, notice if that tightened up your shoulders at all. All of these things, again, identifying accumulative stress in connective tissue is something that you want to notice. You can also take your large soft ball, and I want you to squeeze it a few times in one hand, and then you're going to squeeze it a couple times in your other hand. And just go back and forth, and I want you to notice 3 things about your grip. Number 1 is, do you feel like your grip feels balanced from left to right? Are you noticing one hand has a stronger grip? Notice if you're feeling a lot of tension in either of your forearms as you squeeze, or if you're feeling tightness in the knuckles. Just remember those things. Okay, and then we're going to do 2 compression techniques with this ball first. We're going to place the ball at the base of the hand. We're going to clasp our fingers together and we're going to compress the ball. And you can keep your hands like this if you want. And we're going to try gliding. And I'm just going to come up to the camera so you can really see what I'm doing with my hands. Okay, I'm kind of squeezing the ball. So notice I'm flattening out that ball. And then I'm gliding the ball back and forth between my hands, keeping my fingers kind of knuckled together. Gliding is a preparatory technique. It's a way to explore our connective tissue for areas of sensitivity. So you just want to kind of notice this. And really, we're just preparing the tissue for using the firm ball today. Okay, so you're just going to glide back and forth. And then we're going to bring the ball to our thumb pad, and you're going to compress the ball. And now you're going to do a little shearing technique. So we're going to pin the skin. And we can even think of one hand, so I can kind of feel like I'm kind of I'm kind of holding the ball with my bottom hand and almost prying the tissue on the top hand. And then I can kind of flip it. Or I can do them both at the same time. So pinning the skin to create a little bit of a shear effect here right along the thumb. You can even come up against the edges of the thumb, kind of dragging the underlying tissue against the substances underneath your skin into the bone. And then we're going to compress and wait. We're also going to do something called an indirect shear. Maintain the compression and just contract the muscles of your thumb. And then the secret of a shear is once you do a shear, you're just going to go ahead and compress and wait. Give the tissue a moment to adapt. And then you're going to let that go. Okay, so now you're going to grab your large, firm ball for a moment here. We're going to repeat the exact same techniques using that firm ball. So again, we're going to place the ball at the base of the hand. You're going to curl your hands over. And this time you're going to go a little more slowly with your gliding. And now I want you to use gliding not just as a preparatory technique, but actually to explore the tissue for areas of sensitivity and lumpiness. Okay, so when connective tissue, especially in the superficial tissue, gets a little tacked down, it'll almost feel lumpy in the tissue. So ideally it's smooth as you're gliding back and forth. Notice if there's any sensitivity here. And then you're going to come to your thumb pad. Same thing, you're going to compress the ball, and then you're going to create small circles. So a shear effect is actually working to pin the skin, which on our hands is a little unique here. So again, really tiny motions. You see how that ball's really staying in one spot. I'm kind of twirling it around. And then again, we're going to compress and we're going to wiggle our thumbs. And then we're just going to wait there for a moment and then let it go. Okay, so now you're going to take your large softball first, and you guys are going to do a technique called finger rinse. You're going to put one hand down, and you're going to push the ball from the base of your fingers to the tip of your fingers. And Kara's going to keep that going, and I'm going to go ahead and change the angle of my camera today so you guys can really see what we're doing here. And you're rinsing down the fingers, and don't forget your thumb. And so on the thumb, I come all the way to the base of the hand. And then you're going to swap sides. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So rinsing is a one-directional motion. So take a look here. I'm going from the base of my fingers, not the back of my hand, base of my fingers, and I'm pushing in one consistent direction. But as I'm going over the fingers of my hand that's on the ground, I'm going up the palm and the wrist of the other side. See how I kind of keep the flow going. And again, it kind of comes all around here. So it doesn't matter what sport you play or lifting weights, your hands are so important. And if the hands get congested, you'll have all sorts of trouble in the elbow and shoulder specifically. Okay, so then come on down onto your side, and we're going to rinse the forearm. So we're going to come up our forearm. And we're going to practice this technique that I want to do today in the forearm with the softball, and then we're going to add that firm ball. Okay, so we're just going to kind of move some fluid flow up my wrist, and then I'm going to stop about halfway up my forearm. I'm going to place my hand on the ground, and I like resting my opposite hand over, and I'm just going to glide the ball. I don't have a lot of pressure. I'm just moving it up to my elbow back and forth, and then I'm slowly going to go ahead and move it back. And I'm going to kind of use gliding to sort of prepare, but to also sense that flexor muscle that gets so lumped in. You kind of feel like you're flipping over. Can you feel that flipping structure? Right. So when we do the shear here, I don't want to be on the outside of that flipping muscle. I want to go inside. And then once we're here, take a look at where I am. I'm about 3 fingers distance away from my elbow. I'm going to go ahead and take my top hand, compress, and I'm going to flex and extend my wrist. I'm going to do lateral motion. I'm going to wiggle my fingers. And really slowly I'm going to make fists. And if you make a fist too big, it's going to repel away from the ball. So I want you to maintain your pressure as you create that technique. You can even let your elbow drop down behind it to really get the leverage. And then we're just going to wait there for a moment, and we're going to let it go. Okay, so now you're going to get your firm ball, and we're going to repeat that rinsing motion just so you kind of have the hang of it. Right? And remember, with the firm ball, you don't have to press harder. It's already more focal pressure because the ball doesn't squish. So here we're going to really kind of create more sensitivity in the compression. So just notice what you feel. And this time as you come up, we're going to come up and we're going to stop again about 3 fingers away from my elbow. I'm going to let my hand rest down, and back and forth I go with the ball. But this time I'm going to use this as a direct shear. So the ball is not moving. Can you see how my ball is staying completely still? And I'm dragging the underlying substances of my skin. I pin the skin. I'm going back and forth against that muscle of the flexor muscles. And then I'm going to drop to the inside. Again, I'm going to use my hand to maintain the compression, and I'm going to flex and extend the wrist. And again, you could even drop your elbow down, and you do that flexion and extension. You can do lateral motion. You can wiggle your fingers, and really slowly you can make fists. And then you're just going to pause there. And then we're going to rinse again. You're going to bring that fluid flow back up. Okay, and then we're just going to swap over. We're going to do the same thing, all of it on the other side. And we're going to start with that softball again. Okay, so again, we're just going to take the ball. We're going to rinse up the forearms. So I like using the softball first. It's a little more forgiving. It diffuses some of the compression. So if this is enough for you, again, you could just use the softball and never even use the firm ball. I don't want you to feel like you have to. Okay, so again, now this time, you're going to come up just a little over the wrist, and then you're just going to just back and forth, just let the ball kind of move over your forearm, kind of become familiar with that flexor musculature in your forearms as we go back and forth. And then again, when you come a few inches away from your elbow, about 3 fingers distance is enough. Again, you could even drop your elbow down. Again, you're not going to be on the outside of that tendinous muscular structure. You're going to go to the inside. And same thing, we're going to do flexion and extension with the wrist, lateral motion, wiggling our fingers, and very slowly making fists. So this is called an indirect shear, contracting muscles against a compressive interface that'll create a shear effect in the tissue. And just remember, after you do a shear, just wait there for a moment, don't do anything. And then let it go. You're going to get your firm ball, and same thing, we're going to rinse up a couple of times now that that tissue is prepared. Right, so the one thing about connective tissue you want to remember is that it's a supportive infrastructure. You go too deep, too fast, fascia actually resists the uptake of compression so that you don't invade any of the nerve endings that are in there. So, okay, so now again, I'm going to come up a little more slowly. I'm going to stop about 3 inches away from my elbow. Again, if I go back and forth, but this time the ball stays still, that's a shear, right? So directly affecting the tissue from skin to bone. And then again, I don't go to the outside of the tendon, I go to the inside. Again, I can even drop my elbow down. I can do an indirect shear, flexing and extending. Notice if you're feeling that, pretty much, I feel it. Wiggling lateral motion, wiggling the fingers, really slowly making fists. Again, don't let the ball repel away. And then we're gonna pause, and then we're gonna rinse again. All right, I got one more for you in a shear technique, which is one of my favorites, which is a forearm shear. And you can do this one sitting upright. You could even be at a table doing this, but because we're here, I'm going to do it this way for you. I'm going to put that forearm down how I had it. Whoops.
You better not fall down.
You're going to put your forearm down. You're going to grab the ball. And what I want you to remember is you have 2 forearm bones, okay? So there's like a little groove. So before you use the ball, you just run your fingers in between the 2 bones. You should be able to feel there's a little groove in here. And that's what we're going to be working with. So again, we're going to be doing a little shearing. We're going to pin the ball to the skin, and we're going to drag it back and forth. So I'm not rubbing the ball anymore. No more gliding. We're just going to drag the ball back and forth. Or we're going to pin it and we're going to twist it. And then we're going to pause. And we're going to let it go. And we're going to just pick another spot. Same thing, we're going to drag the tissue. And then same thing, I could also pin and twist it. Now when you come up a little bit further, I don't want you to be too close to the elbow. Okay, so you're going to pause there for a second. we're going to come up just a little bit more. So I'm about 2 fingers away from my elbow joint. If I point my elbows to my finger and then aim it down. Again, if you guys compress this area, it might be fairly sensitive. So again, just go ahead and drag the tissue between those 2 bones or twist it. And then you're going to compress the ball. So don't push, just take your hand over it and just compress. Okay, and then once you're there, really slow, we're going to flex and release the forearm. We're going to open up that tissue. We can do lateral motion. We could wiggle our fingers. You'll know you're on it because when you wiggle, you almost feel the muscles contract under it. Or really slowly, again, make fists, but don't let the ball repel. That one's a big one. And then we're going to pause. Now, I like using the ball. I actually like just kind of dragging the ball. I actually just keep it in my hand and I just sort of run it down to create that rinsing. And then we're going to try that same thing on the other side. Okay, so same thing. We're going to put our forearm down. We're going to take the ball somewhere in the lower part of our forearm. We're going to drag back and forth. Or again, we can twist. Now, the tissue between the 2 bones called the interosseous membrane, and around here we've got all of these nerves and blood vessels, right? So we're going to decompress, we're going to move up a little bit further. Same thing, we're going to drag. And so you might find that there's a ton of inflammation and congestion in here that you did not know about. So again, if it's sensitive, don't shove the ball in, just kind of give it a little bit of motion. Again, you're going to twist the ball. We're going to compress and wait. And again, don't come up into the crease, come down a little bit. So I always say if you kind of put 2 elbows on your finger or on your elbow joint and then you point your fingers down, this is where you're going to find a little bit of an area of sensitivity. In acupuncture, this is a large intestine point. So if you're full of poo, this might be a really sensitive spot if you tend to have a lot of constipation. Okay, so we're going to drag here. Again, I could also twist it. Or I could do the indirect shear. In indirect shear, I just take my hand over the ball. I just kind of let my hand rest. And then nice and slow, I flex and extend. I do lateral motion. I wiggle my fingers. And really slowly, I make fists. And same thing, I'm just going to pause here. And then again, I'm just going to take the ball and I'm just going to rinse it down. I'm just going to brush it. And if you don't, you could just use your hand also, but I just kind of feel like I get a little bit more out when I just run the ball down. And I want you to rinse up your forearms one more time. We're going to really drive as much fluids up to our neck before we do this next set of the treatment. And then we're going to try that same thing on the other side, rinsing up. Keep going on that. And then the last technique is friction. So you're going to go ahead and place the ball in between your hands. I hope I just didn't lose everybody. Did I lose everyone?
Doesn't look like it.
I don't know. I think you guys are still here. Maybe somebody give me a message that, yes, you can still hear me. I hope so. I accidentally just turned my phone off. Hopefully all are still there. Can you all still hear me? Yes, okay, okay. Yes, you can. I think that's what you're saying. Okay, we hear you. Okay. Okay, so last technique is friction. Nice and light, we rub the ball. Breathing in, breathing out. Okay, thank God. Whew. I just turned off my telephone in the middle of a live session. All right, dodgy, dodgy. You see how Kara's doing it? So you could do it that way as well. You could be using the firm ball or the soft ball. Just take some nice breaths in and out. Okay, set the ball aside. This is what I love, is when I open up my arms, I feel a buzzy sensation coming up. I can feel it in my jaw right now. So I've moved fluid flow, and it's actually stimulating the sensory nerves in my arms. So we can bring our palms together again, and we can breathe into our back. And notice if you can breathe into your back, or if your arms feel a little bit lighter now, move your wrists around. Notice if those wrists move a little more freely. And if you drop your hands back, notice if your hands make a better T. If they do, you're already a great hands-off body worker. You're making massive changes up above. Take your large soft ball. What about squeezing that ball a few times? And we might come back to this to reassess at the end of our session because we've got some stuff to jam out on in the upper body today. And just sort of notice if the grip feels more balanced from left to right, if you feel stronger in your grip, you feel less tension in your forearms, less tension in the knuckles. All of these are great signs that you've improved sensory motor feedback, which just helps you with life in general. Okay. So how you feel on that one?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so we're gonna do a little bit of upper body rehydrate, one of my favorite sequences, because we're gonna be working on some shoulder stability. So if you've got long hair, go ahead and wrap it up. You're gonna take your roller, And just bring this down a little bit. You're going to place your body onto your roller so that your mid-back, just below the shoulder blades, the bottom of your shoulder blades are on the body side of the roller. They're not on the top of the roller, they're a little bit lower. So it's in your shoulder girdle that you feel you've got the roller, almost like you're sitting in a little basket. If you shimmy your shoulder blades, you feel your shoulder blades hit the roller. We're gonna start with a pelvic tuck. So go ahead and lift your hips, kind of curl your pubic bone towards your nose and set it back down. Non-negotiable. Pelvis has got to stay in the same place. Bottom of your ribs are going to stay in the same place. Hands go behind your head and kind of like a wide letter V with your arms. They don't have to be flat out, just a little bit angled. If you come up into flexion, like as if you're going to do a sit-up, see if you can find a little engagement in your abdomen. Keep your bottom ribs here. We're going to do a rib length assess. Take a breath in. And on an exhale, we're going to come through rib length. And without moving those bottom ribs, just breathe into your chest. Notice for any tension in your torso. On your exhale, come back up into flexion. See if you can do that without pulling on your head. Take another breath in, and on an exhale, go through rib length again. And then stay in your extension. Take a breath in and side bend your ribs to the right and breathe into the left side of your body. And just notice again for tension, we're just evaluating, assessing what we feel. And then come back through the center. And then without moving your pelvis or your bottom ribs, side bend to the left and breathe into the right side of your body. And again, just notice what you feel. Maybe this time just go back and forth, left and then right. And again, just kind of notice, do you go more left? Do you go more right? Do you feel like your neck gets tight to do these things? Just notice what you've got going on. Point your elbows to the sky once you come back to the middle. Lift up your hips and you're going to move the roller towards your upper back. And take a look at how I'm relatively flat back and I'm going to begin my gliding. So just like we did in the hands, what's gliding? It's a small local compression technique. About the size of my hand is the same size that I'm doing, right? So I'm not ironing myself like a shirt. You see people like in the gym, just kind of like flying over their roller. If you stay really small with this, and once you get your glide going, sink your hips and try to curl your back a little bit so it's two curved surfaces over one another. Don't put tension in your neck. Find a spot that you feel is tender. If you don't find a tender spot, just pick a vertebra to weight on. Set your tucked pelvis back down onto the ground. Curl your ribs forward. I like to even push into my feet to really pin that vertebra. And when my shoulder's relaxed, I'm just going to slightly tip my torso right and left. Here's my shear. So I'm pinning the skin and I'm twisting it against the vertebra so that the movement is happening above the roller, not below. And then I'm going to wait here for a second, give the tissue a moment to adapt. I'm going to replant my feet. I'm going to lift up my hips. I'm going to move the roller down into my mid-back, just near the bottom of my shoulder blades, and I'm going to start gliding. Now, what I want you to see is when I come down lower, look at how my head is more curved up. I don't even need my hands. If I've got good core strength, my abdomen's going to do the work, not my neck. Don't pull on your head. Just let your head almost rest into your hands. You could even think about elongating your neck here. Same thing, breathe a little bit, find a spot you want to work on, slide your pelvis back onto the ground in a tuck, curl your ribs forward so that you're really pinning that vertebra to the roller, and then really tiny tipping right and left. It does not need to be a big movement. Really feel like you're kind of pinning your skin and twisting it, right? Almost like you're trying to open up a safety-proof bottle cap, right? You got to kind of push and twist at the same time. And then we're going to come back to the center. We're going to wait here. We're going to replant our feet, and I want you to take your left elbow, and I want you to energize it up to the sky, and that's going to get you off your spine. You're going to be on your inner shoulder blade, and on that right side, you're going to lift up your hips, and you're going to try to find the tip of your scapula, right? So we're really working right on this little bony prominence right here. See if you can find that as you glide. And once you find the bottom of your scapula, see if you can run up the inside edge. And I got to tell you, my shoulder blades are sore today from a workout yesterday. Yowza. Okay, so again, I'm going to glide. Find an area of sensitivity. Don't keep raking over it. You want to meet the barrier. Find the area that's sensitive. Just nuzzle up against it. Set your right hip down to the ground. And here we're just going to go ahead and fan the arm. And this is kind of the motion that we're going to be working on today with our side lying arm fan. So we're just going to do this one tiny motion here. Do a little shear effect. And then we're going to pause. Nice focused breath. And then come on back to the center. If you've moved back, you might want to run yourself back up before you go through the screen, Kara. And then same thing from the middle. I'm going to energize my right elbow up. Okay, so I get off of my spine, just a slight tip. I haven't gone very far. I lift up my hips and I create my gliding. Same thing, once I find the tip of the shoulder blade, I'm going to try to find the inside edge. So again, I might slow down with my glide, really exploring that, using my core, letting my head rest in my hands, checking my shoulders aren't getting tense. Same thing, if I find a tender spot, I'm not going to get right on it. I'm going to nuzzle up against it. I'm going to set my left hip down, and same thing, I'm going to fan my arm in and out. So if I contract a muscle that I'm compressing, that is an indirect shear force, right? So I'm using my muscles to leverage the tissue and pry and pull it apart. Same thing, I'm going to pause here for a moment. Nice breath in and out. Okay, and then take your time, come on and up. We're not going to rinse yet. We're going to go ahead and set that roller ahead of us, and we're going to get our resistant band, and we're going to use that fluid flow that we just produced, and we're going to drive it into our shoulder with a reintegration technique called side lying arm fans. So you're going to take your melt band, and you are going to set it down onto the ground, and then you're going to rest your hip onto the band so that it's going to hold the band in place, and then you're going to side lie down. Okay, and you can be using the roller, a bolster, a pillow, it doesn't matter. But a couple of things about this position. You want to be comfortable. So the setup is super important. So the first thing is, do you feel like you're lying on your hip bone? And if the answer is yes, you're going to take your top foot, put it on the floor, and you're going to shove your bottom hip back, and then you're going to restack your legs so that you should feel more like you're lying on your thigh rather than you're lying on your hip joint, number one. Second is, do you feel like you're lying on your shoulder joint? If that's what you're feeling, outreach your bottom arm a little bit so that you feel like you're lying more on the outside of your shoulder blade rather than the shoulder joint. Okay, so the movement that we're going to be producing here is external rotation. So if you just put your arm right atop your side body and just rotate the arm in and out, and you try to keep your elbow on the body, that's actually not how the movement's going to be. We're going to be doing the same exact motion, only our arm position is going to be in front of us a little bit, and we're going to be creating that same motion. So I don't want you to think you're dropping your arm down. You're actually letting your elbow float a little bit as you create the rotation, all right? And I call this my J pose, like the arm is going to cup around, all right? So now you know the movement. You're going to internally rotate your hand, and you're going to put your finger on the band, and whatever resistance you find, that's how much I want you to use today. You're going to go ahead and crumble up your band. And once you have the band in hand, nice loose handle, I want you to feel like you are pulling the band up out from underneath you. And you're going to bring your arm back to that 90-degree angle. Now to set us up here, if you feel all of the tension in your neck, you're already in the wrong neural pathway, drop the band or just lighten some tension, right? I don't need the dominance of a different fascial line working. I'm really looking for the rotator cuff to take over the work here. So I'm holding the band. If you're doing this right, you're feeling a burn in your shoulder. Again, if you're feeling your neck, you could drop your nose down, look at your legs, or again, lighten up the band. Okay, so to set us up, first reintegration set. I'm going to punch my arm out ahead of me, look, it's over my hip, not in front of my shoulder, and then I'm going to bend my elbow and the band goes behind me. I'm going to pull forward and I'm going to pull back. So I have constant tension on the band. The band is never decreasing in its tension. And this is, again, just kind of fatiguing some of these big muscle movers. One more time, I'm going to punch forward, but this time as I come back, I'm going to bend my elbow bone. I'm going to let it float in front of me. It's not touching me. If this is already super intense, I could take my bottom hand, use it as a little bit of an elbow rest. That's super fine. You should already feel like your shoulder is burning on fire, maybe even shaking a little bit. And here we go with a little external rotation. Look at how small the range is. And then we're going to come back to parallel and we're going to pause. So we're going to neurologically reintegrate external rotation, holding, and then coming back to parallel. 2 to go. Little external rotation. So it's the action of the onset of the movement, not the range, and then come back to parallel. That's what we're reintegrating. One more time, trying to activate those deep stabilization components of external rotation, and then coming back to neutral. 4 for the pattern, no pause. You're just going to make a little rotation. 1, 2, wrist is staying in line with the forearm. Don't pull that wrist back. 3 and 4, and then let the band go. And now go through a bigger range of motion. And again, if you've done that right, your shoulder feels like it is full of blood now. It should feel like almost heat is generated in the shoulder. You should feel it ideally all in the shoulder itself, not in your neck. And then release the arm back down. How'd you do today on that one? Did you get it?
Yeah, it was in the right spot.
I love it. Okay, flip on over to the other side. So again, these are really nuancy techniques, but if you master it and you don't let yourself go into a compensatory state, when what I mean by that is feel it in your neck and just keep going, which is not what we want, you can really make some significant headway in the way that your nervous system operates. Okay, so remember, setup's really important. Your head's nice and relaxed on your roller. Do you feel like you are lying on your hip bone? If the answer is yes, don't sit there like that. Put your top foot on the ground, roll your bottom hip back, top hip forward. You're gonna stack your legs. And again, I don't want you to feel like you're lying on your bottom shoulder, so we're gonna outreach that bottom arm a little bit so that I'm more lying on the back of the outer part of my shoulder blade, not my shoulder joint. And again, let's just practice the movement. Hand comes up, and we're just gonna rotate the hand in and out. Again, just kind of gaining an idea of how much range we have, right? Lots of muscles are going to activate to go through full range. We're only going to work with the action of the onset of the movement, okay? So again, we're going to internally rotate. Wherever my hand hits the band, about the same amount of resistance that I had on the other side. Same thing, I'm going to crumble up my band into a nice loose handle. And then I'm going to pull up, like as if I'm pulling the band out from underneath my body. And here my arm comes to parallel. Okay, so I'm already creating neurological reintegration of the deep stabilization mechanisms of my shoulder joint. Okay, so these are these rotator cuff muscles that are oftentimes inhibited to activate properly. And if they're activating improperly, you're going to feel it all in your neck. My cue to you is drop the band, take less resistance, or nod your nose down and look at your own legs. All right, hand is floating in front of the hips. And now we're going to go for our second reintegration, punching the arm forward. And then bending the elbow and letting it float back. Band always has resistance to it, punching in front of my hip bone and then pulling it back. 2 more times, punching forward and pulling it back. And 1 more time, punching forward. And this time as our arm comes back, we're not gonna let that elbow pass the hip bone. We're gonna let it float in front of the hip bone, and we're gonna wait here. So if you feel, again, it's in your neck, drop the band, lighten it up. Otherwise, if you need to, you could always hold your own arm here and see if you could take some of that tension away, up to you. Here we go, reintegration. So again, it's just half of the range. So we're just gonna externally rotate so that the knuckles go towards where the ceiling meets the wall. And then you're coming back to parallel and you're gonna pause. Again, external rotation, you're going to pause, and then bring it back to parallel and pause. 2 to go. Externally rotate, you're going to pause. And then back to parallel. So if you're feeling a little shake, little quiver, that's fantastic. 1 more time. So again, trying to override all of the compensation, all these big muscle movers to do the work, and then coming back to parallel and pause. 4 for the neurological repatterning. No pause, just see if you can keep your elbow in the same place. Tiny motion up. Tiny motion down, 2 more, up and down, and 1 more time, up and down. Let the band go, and now go through the range of motion. So again, if you're feeling it in your forearm, if you feel it in your neck, those are the wrong neural pathways. We're looking for those deep stabilizers to take over, not the muscle movers. So instead of the superficial back arm line, we're looking for the deep back arm line to activate, right? And if you're really feeling that burn in your shoulder, you've got it. Okay, so if you've got that nice work in your shoulder, how do you feel on that one? I love it. It almost does. It gives you like that big blood rush. Exactly. Okay, so take the band away for now. And we're going to sit on up onto our roller. I'm going to change. Well, actually, you will need that band in a second. We're going to change. We're going to do one of my other very favorite moves, which is a double-handed backhand. I'm going to have Kara stay exactly where she is. I'm going to slightly angle myself. Actually, Kara, sit back a little bit. Go back further on yours so they can see you. Okay, so this movement, you guys are going to sit up nice and tall on your roller. We're both up on top of this roller. We're going to grab our band about shoulders width apart. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to do this wrong, and then I'm going to do it right. Okay, so your arms are out ahead of you. What we are not going to do is activate the shoulder blades coming together. Can you see how my shoulder blades pinch? Wrong pathway, right? I'm going to start shrugging. My shoulders will come up. What I want to do is feel like I'm reaching my arms forward to get my shoulder blades onto my rib wall, and then I'm going to start to pull out. Don't pull back. Pull the band wide. Keep pulling, and that band is going to come towards you, and I want it to come towards the lower part of your sternum. So keep pulling out. Band should come near you. Stop before it hits your torso. And then nice and slow, you're going to return the arms forward again. Same thing, you're going to take the band. Again, we're going to pull out wide, right? And I'm going to just keep pulling, like as if I'm trying to get my arms to go as long as I can. Again, the band should come near my sternum, and then nice and slow, I'm going to return. You're going to do it 2 more times. I'm going to give you as many angles as I can today, right? So same thing. We're pulling the band out. Pull, 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 pull. And as you pull, it should come towards your torso. And then nice and slow, we're going to return. 1 more time. Pulling tension to the band. Again, if you're doing it right, it should come towards the middle of your torso, not up at your chest. It's down lower. And then return the arms. 4 for the pattern. It's almost a little snap of the band. You're going to pull the band, and then you're going to return. You're going to pull the band, and you're going to return. That little vibration through the band should actually activate some of these muscles a little more aggressively. 1 more time. Pull, and then release it. So if you've done that right, again, you get a ton of work into the back of the arm, which is what we're looking for. How you doing? Yeah? Okay, so we're going to rinse the upper back now that we've got all of that done, and we've got still a little bit more to go. A couple other really great techniques, some of my favorites today. So rinsing is sometimes tough for people, so watch how we're going to do this. Instead of having your knees right on top of your ankles, walk your feet forward so that you have a wider knee angle. And if the roller kind of starts somewhere in your mid-back, sort of how we started before, bring your hands behind your head, elbows point up. You're going to lift up your hips and bring your knees on top of your ankles. Once you do that, the roller's naturally going to come up to your upper back. Watch me here. I'm going to take a breath in. On an exhale, first thing I'm going to do is let my hips sink a little bit, and then I'm going to think about curling my back as I push into my feet so that my pressure is on the curved side of the roller. As I move down my back, look at how my butt just drags against the ground. And then I'm going to reset my feet. Again, my heels are very far in front of my knees because the roller's lower now, so that when I lift my knees up, I'm going to bring my knees back atop my ankles. Roller's going to come up here. I'm going to take a breath in and pause. And then again, I'm going to let my hips sink. And then I'm going to think about curling my back. So the crown of my head goes up, my butt drags to the ground, and then I release. I'm going to try it 2 more times. So again, resetting my feet, bringing the knees up atop my ankles. Breath in, let the hips sink, and then rinse down. And 1 more time, reset. Lift up the hips, take a breath in, let the hips sink, and then rinsing it down. So let's reassess our rib length here. So we started out with this just to see if we've opened up anything in our rib wall, bottom of the shoulder blades, again on my side of the roller, pelvis is in a tuck, hands go behind my head, I'm going to take a breath in. This time my elbows are again wider than up, so they're kind of toward the corners of the room, and I go through rib length again, noticing if I've increased some ability to extend my chest, which I certainly have for me. I exhale, I come back up into flexion. I'm going to take another breath in, exhale, go through rib length. Taking a breath in, I'm going to side bend to the right, breathing into the left side of my body, noticing I've opened up some range. Back through the midline, exhaling, side bending. This time again, I'm going to side bend right and left and notice if I've opened some range. I definitely feel I've got more space here. I'm sure I could even go a little bit further on this. So let's keep going. Okay, so take your resistant band and you're going to lie it back onto your mat lengthwise. How do you feel on that one? Good. Nice change? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to take our band, we're going to put it across the mat, and we're going to take our roller and we're going to put it across the band so that it's on the head side of the roller like you're making a lowercase t. And then you're going to come on up with your butt at the end of your roller so that when you lie down, your head's going to land atop the roller. So I want your whole torso, head, ribs, pelvis, everything supported by the roller. Touch the top of your head, make sure that that's where you are. Once you're up onto a roller, very first move we always do is called gentle rocking. So you're just going to go ahead and let your body gently tip and rock right and left. Gentle rocking is a reconnect technique, and there's 4 R's of melt: reconnect, rebalance, rehydrate, release. Reconnect techniques, they are ways for your autopilot to regain connection to your center of gravity. So as we gently tip and rock, it's giving our nervous system time to adapt to the pressure along the spine and also helping our body find stability by challenging our balance on an unstable surface. We're going to come on back to a center point. Place your hands on the front of your pelvis, and we're just going to practice a little tucking and tilting because if we have time, we're going to do one more sequence for the lower body. So tucking, pubic bone curls toward the nose, not pushing into my feet or squeezing my butt cheeks. My feet are light on the floor to hold that. That's going to activate my core. And then as I untuck my pelvis, my pubic bone is kind of passing between my legs. It's almost like a red carpet rolling out into my sacrum so that my pelvis lands back atop the roller. Keeping my feet light, I'm going to go ahead and tuck my pelvis. And as I tilt, I'm going to bring my pelvis back atop the roller. Now, your ribs are ideally staying quiet, your legs are staying quiet, and you're just moving your pelvis. If you feel like your ribs want to come with you on your tilt, just put your hands on your rib cage. Pay attention to what's staying stable as you move. That will definitely help to reintegrate neural timing, all right? So kind of drawing your mind away from movement and into stability. Very unique concept here to reintegrate, okay? So not actively tucking. We're not going to actively tilt. We're going to find somewhere in the middle. And once we're here, take your arms up into the air. And as if you're holding a box, not over your shoulders, but actually holding a box over your pelvis, I want you to reach your fingers to the sky, allowing the shoulder girdle to flare around the rib wall, and then allow the shoulder girdle to sink back down. We're going to do this about 5 to 10 times, reaching up and coming back down. This is called shoulder blade reach. It's a nice, easy lengthening technique to just rehydrate some of the tissues between the shoulder girdle and the rib wall so that we actually have some nice range of motion here. We're going to do it one more time, reaching up and then allowing the shoulder girdle to go heavy. Now keep that shoulder girdle nice and relaxed. Bend your elbows and let your thumbs rest on top of the temples for a moment. So my shoulder girdle is heavy. The move we're going to do is called the arm and hammer. I want you to take your thumbs and just move them away from your temples like you're making a letter V with your forearms. That's going to be our arm position when we have our resistant band. And then just let your arms go through a full range of motion, bending and straightening. So it's the elbow joint that's going to be moving. It's not the wrist. It's not the shoulder. Shoulder girdle is going to stay nice and relaxed. That's going to be our range of motion, okay? So to do this technique, you're going to grab your resistant band, you're going to drape it over your shoulders. Doesn't matter if one side's longer than the other, because you're just going to go ahead and fold that band up, and you're going to crumble it up and make 2 nice loose handles with your band. Once you've got the band in hand, you're going to put your thumbs back onto your temples. Let's go with a shoulder girdle reaching up. That's not where we want to do this treatment. You're going to let the shoulder girdle relax around the roller. Now, once you've got that collarbone wide, shoulder girdle heavy, just very subtly let your thumbs actually lift up toward the sky away from your temples so that you find just a touch of resistance on your band, and then let your hands go wider so that you've got that letter V. All right, and once you're here, you are holding tension on the band, thinking collarbones are wide, elbows are kind of radiating toward the sky, hands are externally rotated, and you're just pulling tension on the band and holding, reintegrating those deep stabilizers, not moving at all. Now we're going to take a little half extension. You're going to extend the elbows halfway up to the ceiling. Notice if your arms are shaking, mine certainly are. And then you're going to come back to that 90 degree and you're going to pause. You're going to do it again, extending the arms up just a little bit. You're going to pause, and then we're going to come back to 90 degrees. You're going to do that 2 more times. I'm just going to change my angle so you can see me here. Extending up, and then coming back to that 90 degree. And then 1 more time, extending halfway up, and then coming back down. Now we're going to go for reintegration all the way up. Take a breath in, and on an exhale, extending the arms all the way up. Pause there for a second. Check collarbones are wide, shoulder girdle is heavy. As you bend your elbows, let the hands stay wider than your elbows the whole way down. And once you get to that 90 degree angle with tension, still pause. And then nice and slow again, extending it all of the way up. Collarbones are wide. Check that the shoulders are still heavy. And then nice and slow, return it back down. Notice if your chest wants to take over. Keep those hands slightly wider than the elbows. Again, extending up, and then nice and slow returning it down, pausing, and then 1 more time, exhaling and extending, noticing if you're tucking your pelvis, keep that pelvis nice and neutral, and then bringing it all the way down. 4 for the pattern, nothing's going to change except pace. Nice and slow, we're going to extend the arms up and coming down, nice and smooth, all the way up, all the way down, hands still wider than the elbows, up and down. And 1 more time, we're going to come up, we're going to come to that 90 degrees, hold here, and we're going to pulse 4 times. 1, 2, 3, hold it there, and then release it all of the way down. Okay, so now if we've done that well, ideally you feel that burn. Grab onto your band, see if you can pull it out from underneath your roller. And we did a backhanded extension. I want you to really think about that motion. You're going to bring your arms up into the air, and I want you to pull tension on your band. And just like how we did, you're going to go ahead and pull the band and you're going to bring it down. And again, I want you to stop before it hits your torso. And I want you to make sure that it's above your sternum, at the bottom of the sternum. It's not up at your shoulders. So bring it down a little bit. And we're going to do that 4 times. We're going to bring the arms up. Before you lose tension to the band, go ahead and pull that band and bring it down. Now the move we're going to do is a lengthening technique called double arm reach. And this is a great way to really learn the angle of it. We're going to do this 2 more times, pulling on the band, and again, learning to stop the tensional pull before the band hits your torso. Hands are staying above the level of your torso here as we return the arm up. One more time, we're going to take a breath in. And on the exhale, we're going to pull that band and we're going to let it hover over our torso. Now, all I want you to do is bend your elbows for a second, let go of the band, and then open the arms back up, palms face the sky. Your elbows, the back of your elbows, if they were eyeballs, they would be pointing right down to the ground. I want you to almost feel like the nice soft flesh of your biceps and your forearms all facing the sky. Again, your hands are not at the level of your shoulders. They were right at the level of the lower part of your sternum. I want you to hold here. And now really imagine reaching your fingers in opposition, like as if you were running your fingers against the edge of a gigantic physio ball, running your arms around there. Find that fascial pull. It'll feel like this warm, fuzzy, kind of a tensional tug throughout the whole arm. Take a nice full breath in. Exhale, see if you can find your core. You can always make your SH sound, holding that tension. And then we're going to do a little neural flossing, flexing and extending the wrists in opposition. So when your right wrist extends, your left wrist flexes, going back and forth like as if you're throwing a ball, hand over hand. You could also make a fist. That might kind of close off the line, feeling that more in the back line of the extensors, so down into your forearms. You could also open your palms up, turn your palms upside down, let your thumbs energize away from you. Same thing, flexing and extending. Or again, making fists. And then take a nice breath in, open those palms back up to the sky. And then when you're ready, go ahead and set your hands down onto the ground and into a wide letter A frame. Now in that wide letter A frame, we're going to do a move called a neck turn reach. Again, I'm just going to angle this down for us a little bit. So in that same nice position, energizing your hands in one direction, so your arms are going to reach long. You're going to plant your right hand down to the ground. I want you to think your nose is tipped up like you're going to kiss somebody who's just a little bit taller than you, or you're smelling something good in the air. So really think of the neck staying long. Take a breath in and so subtly keep that right hand down. You're going to just ever so slightly turn your head to the left. Don't go too far. Take a breath here, and on an exhale, keeping your right hand right where it is, allow your masses to just subtly tip to the left side. See if you can find this huge fascial pull down the entire arm. So it's not just in your forearm. If you're just feeling in your forearm, bring your body back to center. Think about the collarbone being wide, turning the head and coming back into it. Nice, even sense of fascial pull all the way down. That's when you know you're in the land of fascia. Nice breath in and out. And then come on back to center, plant your left hand down. Again, nose tips up a little bit, plant that left hand, and then slightly turn your head to the right. That subtle head turn, if you really have fascial pull, you can feel it clear down your arm. And then same thing, you can just slightly tip your body a little bit over to that right side to really sense that fascial pull all the way down that left arm. We're looking for an even sense of fascial pull all the way down the arm, not just in your forearm, not over your shoulder, the whole arm you want to find in tension. And then come on back to the center. Let's try it one more time. Subtly turning your head to the left, right hand plants to the ground, taking a nice breath in on an exhale. Again, just let your hips kind of slightly tip, let your left shoulder get heavy. And then come on back to the center. One more time, slightly turn your head to the right, energize your left arm and let it rock. Now listen, if you're feeling any vibration or shaking through your torso, you are in the land of neurological reintegration. You have tinkered with your sensory motor system. And then come on back to the center. There's nothing wrong with you. Okay, so take your time. Straighten out one of your legs. You're just going to slide yourself on off the roller, pelvis, ribs, and then your head. And then roll the roller out from underneath you. Bend your knees, and you're going to grab the roller, and you're going to bring it right behind the base of your skull. We're going to add one release, the fourth R of melt. The roller is at the base of my skull. It's not on my neck. Again, the best way to set this up is if you tip your nose up slightly, like again, you're going to smell something good in the air, like the brownies that are waiting for us in the kitchen. We're going to keep our nose tipped up. I can still smell them. And then you're going to slowly turn your head left and right. Noticing if you're getting tense in your shoulders. If the roller feels like it's slipping into your neck, you started with the roller just a little bit too low. If it feels like it's slipping out from underneath you, it's because you're dropping your chin. That roller will fly out from underneath you. Try to keep your pressure constant atop the roller. And then let's tip our head maybe over to the right side. Let your right arm reach out. Let the right leg reach out a little bit. Get into your half back pose, pinning the skin, creating some nice, gentle, small head circles or head turns. If you feel your hair is rubbing up against the roller, I want you to slow down. Make the movement smaller, because remember, shearing is not on the skin surface. You're pinning the skin at the interface of the roller in your skull, and you are creating a shear effect, a gliding of tissues on the underlying plane of the skin between the skin and the bone. So you really got to kind of pin that tissue. Pause here for a second. Nice breath in and out. Flop on over to the other side. I'll come around this way. Same thing. You're just going to drop your arm and your leg out to that side. Same thing, pinning the skin, creating those small circles. Head turns. Same thing. We want to pause here for a moment. And then come on back to the center, at the center of the base of the skull. Instead of the head turn, try a little figure 8 here. Really small, just kind of pinning the skin, creating that nice subtle motion. I always feel like I'm doing a backstroke with my ears. Same thing, we're going to pause here for a moment. And now place the roller right at the center of the back of your head. I even like kind of picking up my roller, tipping my nose up to the sky so that I feel like my head's like a bowling ball, leveling it right atop the roller. To decompress, I keep my pressure constant. Whatever you feel is consistent here, take a breath in. On an exhale, very subtly, you're going to nod your nose down without losing space in the front of your neck, so not dropping the chin, but lengthening through the front and back of your spine. Taking a breath in. On an exhale, lifting your chin up. Another breath in. Exhaling, nodding down. Breath in. Exhale and lift up. And one more time. Exhale and nod down. And then taking one more breath in. And exhaling and lifting our chin up. Okay, get rid of the roller. Let's do a couple of reassessments. So first, lie on your back, palms up, arms and legs extended again. And remember, we pointed out some common imbalances. I said, hey, in your upper body, if your shoulder girdle's loaded with stuck stress, you're going to feel most or all of your back weight's propped up on the shoulder blades. Your head might be off-centered and your arms might feel unevenly weighted. Notice if your masses are more relaxed on the ground than when you started. Maybe the arms are more balanced, the neck feels more open. If you turn your head left and right, you might have freed up some range there. I definitely did. That's fantastic for me. And then bring your head back to the center. Notice if your mid-rib wall is more relaxed, if the arch of the back is less extreme. We didn't do anything for your lower body, but notice if your butt cheeks or back of thighs have settled to the floor. All great indications that we've restored some nice hydration throughout the neuromyofascial channel just by treating our upper body today. If you divide yourself into a left and a right half, notice if you feel more balanced from left to right. If you started off feeling offset, helping the autopilot reacquire its connection to our center of gravity, even with that neurological reintegration, can make all the difference in the world of how your brain perceives your center. So notice if you feel changes there. Bend your knees, roll on your side, and just out of curiosity, grab your ball, your large soft ball again. And let's see if you've made any changes here with your grip assess. Go ahead and squeeze the ball a couple of times in one hand. And then squeeze the ball in the other hand. And just notice if the strength feels more solid than when you started. I actually feel like I've got a nice strong grip. I don't feel anything in my forearms now, which is fantastic for me. You may even notice if you bring your arms up and you take a breath into your back, You may actually feel it's easier to be more upright, and same thing if you move your wrist around, it might feel like you've got more range, more strength to actually reintegrate some of that extension. And again, notice if your hands extend further back, or when you bring your arms down, if you feel less of that tension in your shoulders, if you started out feeling that during this session. So I hope you guys all enjoyed that. How do you feel on that one?
I may have to take a second nap.
She says you may have to take a second nap. It's true. So I am going to see if there are any questions. I really appreciate you guys coming. If you guys have to bounce, remember 3 things: sip water frequently, eat water-filled foods, reach out to somebody that you love today and tell them why you love them and say thank you for being who they are, because you put a little bit of positive energy out into the world. I'm telling you, you can elevate the frequency of the whole universe, which would help me in a day. So thank you if you'll do that for me. And I'm going to see if there are any questions here. I'm going to scroll all the way up to the top now that I know how to do this. You are welcome for all I do. I love you guys, and thank you guys so much for being a part of this. This has been a new endeavor for me. I've never done this before, so thank you. Yes, hi, hi, hi. I love how many of you guys are here today. I'm seeing if there are. Do I have anything for trigger fingers? Nita is asking. Yes, actually, the treatment that we did today is great for trigger finger. I would also recommend that you use the small softball. There is a technique called knuckle decompress, where you activate a little movement between the tendons to open them up. Finger rinsing, the forearm techniques are super important for trigger finger. Trigger finger is not a finger problem. It's actually that tendinous structure all the way up. So if you open up the forearms, it'll definitely help you with that. Thanks for that question. Hopefully you guys all came back on and you all hear me. What is the best thing to do for arthritic finger digits? Exercising with the softball, pressing the digit and strengthening it on the ball. So there is another technique called finger compression, where you hold the ball and you do flexion and extension of that top knuckle. Wonderful one to do. This one knuckle has a lot to do with the OA joint, the atlanto-occipital joint. So if we have a lot of compression up at the upper cervical region, you may actually have a lot of difficulty doing this. So if you do, you could always hold the ball and go through techniques like this. But again, you always want to start with a little bit of gliding, a little bit of shearing, finger rinsing, and then do the finger techniques and rinse again. All great things. I mean, you know, your world gets awfully small when you lose the function of your hands and feet. So these are incredibly valuable treatments to do, not just for your hands, but to actually draw some of the fluid flow, the fluid perfusion through the fascial net so that you can function more efficiently. It'll help you with your timing, sensory motor control. And you could always have done the hand treatment at the end. Let's see. Well, hand treatments, especially the full hand treatment with the knuckle decompress. Yes, indeed. My core is not very strong. These rib lengths are hard. Yes, rib length is very difficult. In our next session next week, we've got more coming. So most likely I'll do some core techniques and some lower body techniques, activating your core super. My bad. So all possible. Eileen says, will I ever get my hands to open up to a T? I do the hand work multiple times a week, but I don't see any difference in the range. I feel a difference in my breath and my back. Yes, well, that's just it. We're practice, not perfection, Eileen. You know, don't get upset with that, right? And remember, the extension is 80 degrees. That's really the angle. You know, it's not perfectly flexed, but the thing I would be wondering is a lot of people say, hey, I can only get my hands here, but then I come over to them and I can get their wrist to come down, and what they are is weak, right? So we're hydrating the tissue, but are your extensors weak? And if the answer is yes, there's lots of other techniques, and actually what we did today will help those myofascial lines and reintegrate the timing. So the Arm & Hammers, the side lying arm fans, all great ones to do if your wrists don't tend to come back into that letter T. These are just ways to add this to it. Samantha's asking, do I recommend this before or after a workout? Really depends. This type of technique, I would do some of those techniques before I did a training. Like if I were going to do bench press or do some lat pull downs, I would probably do some reintegration, upper back hydrate, and then do that side lying arm fan to stabilize my shoulder girdle so that I get more out of my treatments when I'm doing my techniques. The mini train says, I got a cramp from a panic reaction to a wobble on the roller. Any advice? Half roller instead. Yes, but hey, if you feel like when you first lie on the roller, if you get a cramp in the torso, that is a autonomic response, because the diaphragm, when you suddenly breathe, you're lying on your spine, right? And when we breathe without the weight of the ribs on the ground, the diaphragm actually gets to expand in the back body, which is very unusual for people because we sit and we cause compression on our torso so often that it inhibits diaphragmatic activation. So if you lie on the roller and you get a cramp, your cue is to come off the roller for a moment, take some breaths in and out, see if you can release it, and then come back up onto the roller. Of course, you could always go to the half roller, but you're sensing restrictions in the diaphragm. So if that's you, we might want to do a little bit more upper body rehydrate. Again, it's just all practice and trying to explore your body. So, it's just part of the process, okay? So just be mindful with that. Let's see. Cramping was in the left calf because I wobble. Oh, the cramping in the left calf, but that's your rooted core. That's part of the rooted core, guys. So your rooted core is a neuromyofascial channel that comes up from your jaw. It invests the very deep scalenes and the intrinsic aspects of your throat, creates the pleura of the lungs, encases the diaphragm, your abdomen, comes down through psoas, into your adductors, into the popliteal sac of your knee, and down into the interosseous membranes of your calf. And so as we're channeling through those regions of the body, if you're getting a cramp, that's ground force reaction. Your, foot treatments and some of the lower body work, you are those, don't think there's anything wrong with you. This is information. Your body is trying to send you messages. We just tend to misread the messages, I think, oftentimes, and think something is bad or something is wrong, when really what your body is doing is it's calling out for your help. It's saying, hey, there's something down here I want you to work on. So if I got a cramp in my calf, that would be information to me to maybe come back next week when we do some of the lower body work and see if you can work on your calves, work on your feet, see if you can restore some of that neurological timing. Remember, our body is a process, okay? It's not perfection. You're not born with all the great gifts of your body. We need to actively participate in nurturing our body, coming in, understanding what we're feeling, and giving our body time to adapt to something more stable. It's really important that we do this. So just ease your body work into yourself. Don't rush your practice. Go back and watch this treatment a few times. See if you can perfect the techniques. And I will be back next week for another live session. And for those of you guys who are not a subscriber to Melt On Demand, I have a streaming platform where this piece of the treatment is actually involved with a number of other moves. We work at a slightly faster pace, less about demonstration and just presenting it. So hopefully you guys will come and become a part of our subscription model of Melt On Demand, and hopefully I will see you there as well. 3 tips here. Sip water frequently, okay? Make sure that you are sipping water frequently. Eat water-filled foods. Reach out to somebody that you love today. Tell them why you love them. Put some positive energy out into the universe. Truly, it elevates the frequency for everyone. I hope that you guys all enjoyed this session. If you want to try MOD, yes, we do have a free trial. Go to meltmethod.com and you can subscribe there. Again, I'm on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. So if you have any other questions, reach out to us. Until then, thank you guys so much for being part of the Melt community, and happy melting. I'll see y'all soon.